I grew up at a time when there wasn't the DEI programs. And so the reason why there is a level of confidence and gravitas that will be okay, so we've been here before. We've done this before.
DEI is disappearing. The manosphere is taking over YouTube. What does all of this mean for women of color and power? I have three of them right here with me who are holding their own in their respective fields, but do you feel like you're at risk, Lisa?
I do not. I do not. There is an administration or a culture that believes in meritocracy, and I feel like I have a background and a track record in my lane of meeting those standards and exceeding. And so while leaders are being identified because of race or gender, I feel like in a lineup, if I'm able to get through the door,
you can take them all.
I feel confident in the work that I've done educationally, the work experience, my body of work that, okay, we're talking about meritocracy. That's what Black women have always competed against, and we've excelled. And so,
Danielle, you mentioned earlier that women and women's rights are under attack. Tell us
100%. We're seeing it coming down through executive orders. We're seeing it in, different language, documents or whatever. And it does feel like women are under attack. Women, I believe, receive the most benefits from DEI. White women especially, but women in general still trickle down in that. So we had a lot of things that were looking good for us, a little bit more equal playing field. And now with these things coming down, it's like, where do we stand? Do we fight? Do we kind of chill? Like, what's gonna happen? What's the trajectory of where these things are gonna go down? What's gonna happen now? And I think for the most part, women are very resilient, and we have proven time and time again that we can make it through anything, but it's still very unclear about the path that we're going down. What's gonna happen?
Monica, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what for me is disturbing is that there's still a lack of parity, right, in terms of gender parity. And so when I think about the top CEOs, less than 12% are women, fewer women of color, and even few Black women, right? So we still have a long ways to go. And in some ways, it feels like this attack is unmerited, right? Because
where do you think it's coming from?
I mean, it's very interesting. One of the things I did during the campaigning is I watched the Republican Party campaign and everything, and I think there's this surge of men not feeling as if they hold the station in place that they would like. And so I don't know where that comes from, but I do know that I don't think we can afford to just lay down and roll over.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, we've heard things like Facebook or Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg, for instance, saying we need more masculine energy back in the workplace. We kind of got away from that. What does that mean, right? Not quite sure, not entirely sure, but there is kind of this energy push, especially coming from the top, of seeing more of that come in. Now, I know that each of you work with young women and girls, young teens in various capacities. How are you having conversations with them about, I mean, at one time we knew we had that saying, the future is female, but is that still the case?
I do believe it is. I think Danielle mentioned earlier, like, where do we go from here? And I think as leaders, we have an opportunity to still open the door as gatekeepers, to still create pathways so that young people can explore, will have opportunities. In my leadership, I do a lot of mentoring and coaching. And so I think there is a role for us leaders to continue opening those doors and creating pathways so that young women that look like us may have an opportunity to follow in our footsteps. And so I have a real passion, and I feel the responsibility of continuing to open doors.
Now, I hear you, But when we look at, for instance, what happened in this last election, right? We saw a black woman who was black and South Asian woman who was very qualified for that position, ultimately did not secure the presidency. What message does that send to young girls about whether they can really achieve what they deserve and what they're qualified to do, Monica?
Yeah, I mean, the Girls Index shows that 60% of girls don't feel like they can achieve their career goals, like the career that they want for themselves. And that they also underplay themselves in terms of leadership skills because they don't want to be seen as bossy or domineering. So we already know that messaging was out there. I think that just further amplifies it. And for Girl Scouts, part of what we're doing is we're trying to push against that trajectory and put girls in spaces and places where they can see themselves as powerful, where they can find their voice, where they can experience different things, and then feel themselves going out into the world. I think it's important that even more now than ever that we create spaces for girls to feel safe, to feel like they can push against those stereotypes and against the messaging that they're hearing.
Now, have you all heard of the 92%? Are you familiar with this fraction? I don't. You're part of the 92%, Danielle.
A t-shirt, a sweatshirt.
Yes.
And this is, of course, the 92% of black women who voted for former Vice President Kamala Harris. And also the 92% who has really taken the stance of like, well,
what you guys want us to do? No, but I think that's very important, that 92%. Onto what Monica was saying, like, I feel like now more than ever, women that are in position need to be a little bit more stronger. Like, yeah, we are kind of taking a little backseat to, the heavy duty work, but it's still important for us to reign as leaders. This table in general, we're sitting with, wonderful black leaders, and it's important for young girls to continue to see that, even in this era of uncertainty and, just a little bit of scariness. It's important to still see that black women are still standing strong. We're still encouraging, motivating, and we're still doing our jobs. Regardless of what is happening, the challenges that we're facing, we still have to show up every day. And that's something that we're very used to. We're very used to kind of digging through the mud and still reigning victorious. So,
but did you hope that you wouldn't still have to be doing that at this point?
Of course, because we are tired. We are tired of always coming out strong. We are tired of being, resilient and strong. Like sometimes, we talk about the soft girl era all the time, and it seems like that era gets further away from us, but we just have to work a little harder, I guess, to just kind of thrive towards that, just being able to rest and to just seeing the fruits of our labor manifest.
I think also just being, among the seasoned saints at a certain age, this feels familiar. And so, I grew up at a time when there wasn't the DEI programs. And so the reason why there is a level of confidence and gravitas that will be okay, so we've been here before. We've done this before. I think the 92% who are sipping tea through all of the executive orders and changing, I think what that really means is that for once we're taking care of ourselves. We're taking care of our environments and our families and our friends. And we're taking the cape off. We're not saving, I think the clarion call during the election was mobilize, get out, tell the story that this is not going to be kind of a safe administration for so many people. We're like, okay, we tried. And now my focus is really on my environment and making that environment resilient.
So it sounds like a phase of acceptance in many ways. But would you say that there's also some fear?
I would definitely say there's fear, especially if you are in a space where you are passionate and serving and amplifying the needs of disenfranchised young people and communities. I have great fear for those communities in which my organization, the Clubhouse, serves. We place STEM labs in divested communities for a reason, to help kind of mitigate against this digital inequality and divide. I feel daily I'm getting news from different sites around the globe. Mexican government shut down my sites in Mexico. In the Middle East, the U.S. aid funding got cut off. Those were, my staff was paid for in those sites. And so I have a discomfort around the decisions and why they're being made. We know that the workforce of tomorrow is centered around technology.
Right.
And what we're trying to do and tasked to do is to make sure that young people are prepared for the jobs of the future. So that's not a partisan issue, right?
And I mean, we see that because so much of the power that we're seeing at the top is influenced by these big tech companies.
Absolutely.
Who are run by white men.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And many of them support us, and many of them are leaning into the ingenuity of the communities that we serve and the ideas and innovation of the young designers that we are protecting and cultivating. So it's really interesting to see the decisions at the top, but also this interest, this intentional interest in the ingenuity and the scientific designs of our teens and divested communities. And so there is this double speak that's happening.
And I'm glad you kind of brought in this global point of view, because the UN actually put out a report this month that said nearly a quarter of governments worldwide are reporting backlash to policies that they have enacted to help uplift women's rights, right? And so that is concerning, because this is 30 years after the UN put out a report wanting to advance these very rights. Now, Monica, I do want to talk a little bit about the influence of the federal government in this sphere, right? Because presumably the Girl Scouts of Eastern Massachusetts gets some federal funding. Are you concerned about any of that going away?
I do think that there's possibility that funding will go away. We get less than 3% of our funding is federal, so I'm probably less concerned than many of my counterparts in the nonprofit world. But I do think there is some very clear messaging that we need to align with the executive orders, that if there is an alignment, then funding may go away. I feel fortunate to be in a space to say we get to decide whether we do or take that funding at all, right? And I think it's, but it's a challenge for the nonprofit community, especially as we're working to serve people of color and disenfranchised communities. And so I'm concerned, not as much for my council, but for the broader work that we're trying to do collectively, yes.
You and that 92%.
Yeah.
Concerned, but not concerned.
Concerned, but not concerned. So Danielle, I'm curious, with you being an entrepreneur, having founded Spark FM, do you see this as an opportunity for more people to branch out on their own and be independent?
We're seeing that everywhere. We're seeing how social media, how independent journalists and podcasters and broadcasters are really kind of finding their voice now. They're picking a side and they're kind of sticking to it. I think it's so important for people to figure out where they stand. And if you are on, kind of like this side of the coin, it's more important now for us to kind of really kind of branch out and to get a little louder, because we see that, the opposing side or the other side, they have called out all the stops. They are not going with traditional media now. Now they are investing in creators and social media content. And we're not seeing a lot of that on, I guess, the left side, and we need more of that. And I think that what's going to happen now is places like Spark FM are going to be looked upon a little bit harder now to tell the stories of what is actually going on in disenfranchised communities, what the real stories are, owning that narrative and making sure that our voices are heard and that we can, put that out there and contend with the other ones. So it's a lot, but I think that we're ready for this because we've been, content is queen at this point. So we have to really get
Put that
going.
feminine energy on it.
Yes.
Well, Danielle Johnson, Monica Roberts, and Lisa Cook, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.